I am Camilla Siggaard Andersen. I am an architect by training. I'm also the founder and CEO of a knowledge management software company called Occasio Insights. And then for the past 4 years, I've chaired the NLA's Built Environment Technology Expert Panel. My experience ranges from working at Gale, which is a Copenhagen-based urban quality consultancy, and worked with them both in Copenhagen and New York. Then when I moved to London, I joined Arup's digital studio and worked with them for a while until I joined Hassel in their urban research, leading their urban research activities, until, as I said, I launched Occasio, which is your library of timeless insights. So what we're doing with this platform is helping you keep all of your key points, key qualitative points, client testimonials, project insights, research highlights, news headlines, all in one place, so you can really easily pull all those pieces together to drive your decision making and tell great stories and share with your colleagues as well and retain that institutional knowledge. So with all of those different experiences, what I've learned is really the importance of designing across different systems, from the social to the natural to the technical, to create places where people can live healthily and enjoy a good quality of life. And I'm going to, today with my talk, I'm going to be taking a bit of a wide system-wide lens on how we implement technology in the built environment, because I think it's really, really important that we get the reasons right, and that we understand both the opportunities and also the limitations of digital technology within the context of our profession. Because you start to see, when you consider both different systems and scales of designs simultaneously, both the opportunities and the challenges that technology can present. For example, it's no good if we design a really great personal mobility device, like a car. It's really comfortable, it's really convenient for the individual user. If that then results in traffic jams at the district scale and in carbon emissions and the erosion of the natural environment at a global scale. If the individual experience with technology can't be scaled up without negatively impacting on the collective, then you've only got two outcomes. Either you get system-wide collapse, which is what we're seeing at the moment, or you get significant inequality because you're saying this technology is great, but it'll only work for a few of you. And how do you decide who's got the right to access that technology? Conversely, if we start by considering the wider system needs, like we need to adapt to a changing climate and we need to manage our sort of adverse impacts on the climate, then it's perfectly possible to also make that intimate user experience really enjoyable. And so if we think about technology again, I came here from another event on a Lime bike that I could unlock with my phone. So that's an example of digital technology unlocking something that is both a really great user experience, but which is also much, much better for the environment than if I had jumped in my personal vehicle to get here. So the next 10 minutes or so, I'll be talking about the importance of understanding technology as it relates to society and the environment, and why it's important to direct innovation at the system-wide scale towards a simple and common goal, which is to secure our own health and well-being. In my view, if what we're doing isn't about humanity and understanding humanity's dependence on the natural environment, then I don't know what the point is. But of course, these systems have always been connected, and the evolution of the human world has historically been prompted by shifts that could take place within either of those realms. So it was the environmental pressures of flood risks, for example, that led to the invention of stilt housing, which is a technological solution. But it was the technological invention of electric light that enabled us to establish a social order after dark and extending the workday well into the night. So that was technology having an impact on how society operated. And it was the national security needs of the US that prompted the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency to invest in ARPANET, which became the precursor to the modern internet. So those were geopolitical pressures resulting in technological innovation. So innovation doesn't just happen within one of those systems, but by all of those systems reacting to the changing circumstances on which they rely. But that being said, though, there is obviously one system that has become disproportionately responsible for driving the change we see around us. Over the past 300 years, we've seen exponential growth within the area of technology, which is what's given us the first, the second, third, and now the fourth industrial revolutions. And if you take that sort of change curve and you contrast that with the growth curve of a tree, for example, that's across a period of 300 years as of the natural environment, or if you look at the development of human brain sizes over the past 6 million years, then it becomes quite clear to see why technological innovation has ended up in the driving seat, with both the physical and the socioeconomic systems really under pressure to adapt fast enough. And through the 19th and 20th century, these pressures led to the significant transformation of the built environment and the ways that we inhabit and use space. For example, it was the invention of the elevator in the 19th century that was when we started seeing cities rise to the sky. And that then in turn enabled companies to benefit from agglomeration economies. Likewise, it was the invention of the motor car that made the suburbs feasible as a lifestyle in the 20th century. And now we've got all of these health issues that we're grappling with because we started building around the car. The dominating technology over the past 50 years or so has, of course, been digital technology. And in order to look at digital technology within the context of technological innovation, I think it's useful to look at the different types of technology that exist. And generally speaking, technology can be categorized into transportation, construction, energy, manufacturing, communication, and biological organisms. And throughout history, we've seen revolutionary innovations across all of those different realms. And sometimes we see an innovation in one realm having an impact in the other. So the wheel was invented actually as a manufacturing technology that potters were using, but then the transportation sector started using wheels, obviously, because it was a really good way to get things moving. Digital technology is about the digitization of information and communication systems, and that's why it belongs to this pillar. And historically, this pillar is the communication technology pillar, which is about the exchange of information and messages. Historically, that pillar hasn't really impacted the other pillars so much, and certainly not the construction or even the transportation pillar very much. So when the telegraph was invented, no one was talking about redesigning the city around Morse code, because it just didn't make any sense. But of course, digital technology is slightly different because of its ability to not only handle communication, but also to compute large quantities of information. And we are seeing digital technology having cross-sector impact. But perhaps it was sort of that understanding of technology and how technology has sort of disrupted other parts of our realities that led the CEO of Google's Smart City division to promise that a combination of digital technologies, ubiquitous connectivity, social networks, sensing, machine learning, and artificial intelligence, and new design and fabrication technologies would help bring about a revolution in urban life. This was in 2016. And he then went on to clarify that their impact would be as profound as the steam engine, the electric grid, and the automobile, which are considered the three previous technological revolutions that have largely defined the modern city. That wasn't quite what happened, though. In fact, the Google Smart City experiment famously crashed, and in some ways it actually served to discredit the concept of smart cities the world over. And if you do look around the city today with a bit of a critical lens, it's still very much the technologies of the last centuries that dominate the environment and that dominate urban life. Even if we've got a few more screens on our streets and on our buildings, and even if some of the products that we surround ourselves with have become a bit smarter, fundamentally our buildings, our streets, our infrastructure, our systems, the way we use land, it hasn't really changed that much in the past 50 years. This is an electric vehicle, which is great because it's better for the environment. But we still have a sidewalk and a car and a road and a trip hazard now as well. I'm not the first person to point out that there seems to be a bit of an innovation deficit within our industry. In fact, that's been a recurring topic in our industry media and in academia for a couple of decades. But clearly it didn't used to be that way. We used to be really good at harnessing technology and, as I said, build skyscrapers or reshape the city. So what happened? And I think the short answer to what happened is digital technology happened. And the slightly longer answer is that we fundamentally misunderstood what digital technology is and how it can be made compatible with the built environment. We were expecting it to change the environment the way that the car has, but it won't because it's not physical, it is digital. And the issue is that our understanding of the value and the use of digital technologies has very much been shaped by the global technology sector. So by the likes of IBM, Siemens, Cisco, Google, and others who operate by a very, very different set of rules than us built environment professionals. So if you're Mark Zuckerberg, you can move fast and break things. And that's what the company set out to do when they launched. But we can't do that because if a building fails, there are very real health and safety repercussions. And that's why our industry is governed by ever tightening building regs, which can seem to stifle innovation, but which are there for a reason. We've also been told that there's all this money to be made from big data. And that is true if you're Google, because you can mine data from billions of personal devices, and you can use it for one single purpose, which is to sell advertisement space and sell advertisement intel. But there's no way that a single building or a neighborhood or even an entire city could ever collect that much data, and certainly not if they wanted to uphold privacy laws. And in addition to that, then there's the question of what you use that data for and how you would secure a return on your investment. So running a global digital business, you've got data from lots of different places, and they didn't even have to buy my device. I bought my device myself, and I'm just opting into them, harvesting my data, and they've got one objective, which is drive advertisement revenues. If you're a city, you got to buy your own CCTV cameras because you don't have access to the data that's on most people's phones. You got to buy your cameras and your sensors and so on. And then you have to do lots of things with it. You have to support young people, older people. You have to drive the economy. You have to look after the schools and the health system. There's lots of different objectives that data has to be used for. And by the time you actually get to that point, it's been diluted so much that return on that initial investment in that camera is a little bit doubtful. So running a global digital company is a very, very different business from running a place in the real world. And perhaps that's why we've seen companies that try to combine the two, companies like WeWork, Airbnb, and Citymapper. They're all consistently struggling to turn a profit because of that mismatch in how digital and physical can scale. And then in addition to being encouraged to just collect more data, we've also been sold on this idea of the cloud, as if the digital footprint is virtually non-existent, but it's not. According to the Data Center Journal, and this number is a year old now, so it might be outdated, London already has 104 data centers distributed across the city. And they look like this. It's not particularly innovative, is it? And with the increased use of digital tools and AI and machine learning, the needs for these sorts of sheds instead of clouds, they really begin to grow. And in addition to those spatial requirements, there's also significant energy demands for power and cooling. So much so that there's parts of London now that have been denied planning permission for new housing because the data centers are using all of the electricity that is available on the grid. So digital technology isn't actually ubiquitous, and that is also a reality we'll soon have to face, and which will set up some real limitations actually about how much data we can harvest and process. So I mentioned that I think we've misunderstood how digital technology can be used within our sector. And in summary, I think that the problem is that we've been led to think that everything can be measured, that more data equals more value, and that it's all about being fast, efficient, and flexible, because that is what works in the digital realm. But in the physical realm, in the built environment, that system is so much more complicated than that. And that means that in a city, not everything that matters can be counted and analyzed, and not every service can be packaged and productized and sold for a profit. And not every system can be sped up or scaled up, including things like formations of communities. So with that in mind, how should we approach innovation in the built environment today? Sort of three areas of opportunities that I've seen through my work. And hopefully with this talk, this is sort of where we could start next time. But it's about using technology for communication, because digital technology is a communication technology. It's about using it for evaluation, and also for planning and to thinking more innovatively about planning. So as a communication technology, of course, digital tools would be really, really good for improving conversations and knowledge sharing in the planning industry, but also we've got people here tonight that are working on things like sharing information about building materials. Technology is really great. Digital technology is really, really good at that. So that's sort of the most obvious thing you can do, is think, how do we use digital technology to communicate better in the built environment, whether that means that buildings communicate with each other, or designers communicate with communities, or developers communicate with local councils, or so on. Digital technology can also be a really good evaluation tool if we are a little bit careful about that what we measure is also what we value. So if we want to have cities that are greener with more pedestrians in them, we got to count the trees, we got to count the pedestrians. And we can't just rely on the data that is readily available, because we've done that in the past and it has brought us more roads usually. And then it can be a really good planning tool if it's seen as an enabler instead of a driver of the future that we want to see. So in Helsinki, they've approached that really, really well. So they're building a smart new district in Helsinki, but the vision isn't about being a smart city. The vision is to give everyone that lives there 1 more hour of free time every day. And the way to achieve that objective is in part digital technology. People can work from home more easily, or from a co-working space. They don't have to commute so far. If goods can be brought closer to people's homes, they don't have to travel so far to go to the grocery shop, and so on. And so there's lots of ways that technology becomes part of the answer, but the question is about people and things that matter to people, rather than about just how much technology can we throw at this place. So in most cases, technology is the answer, but it's just so important that we don't get lost in asking the right questions. And the consequences of just implementing technology without actually understanding the purpose of why we're doing so, we've seen it's unlivable, unsustainable, unequitable, uninspiring built environments with negative impacts on our physical and mental health. So to look back at this diagram, I guess where I just want to leave you today is I want to sort of prompt you to sort of return to this system level thinking and think about, well, if we bring this technology to the world, what impact might that have on people and the environment? But likewise, what kind of society and environment do we want, and how do we shape the technologies to give us that, so that we're in the driving seat of the future that we want to create, and that future is human-centered. And then we're really smart and we can innovate anything, really, rather than sort of running after and seeing how we can deploy something new faster, because that doesn't work very well in the long run. I think that's my 10 to 15 minutes up. Thank you so much for coming out and hearing me talk.